The quiet ache and the search for peace. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had one of those quiet moments, late at night, or maybe during a pause in your day, where everything on the outside looks fine, but inside, something just feels off? You've checked all the boxes. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Work, responsibilities, relationships, they're all intact. But underneath it all, there's this subtle ache, not loud, not dramatic, just a heaviness you can't quite name. It's like something inside is quietly whispering, "This isn't it." If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Many of us, especially in this modern life, are carrying an invisible weight. And often, the more we try to hold everything together, the schedules, the roles, the image of who we think we need to be, the more peace seems to slip through our fingers like water. We were taught that striving equals success, that if we just try harder, push more, fix one more thing, then we'll feel better. Then we'll finally feel still, complete, free. But what if that's not how peace works? What if peace isn't something we achieve by force, but something we return to when we stop resisting? You see, in the quiet hours, when the noise fades, when the to-do lists are done, when we're no longer performing or proving, we're left with just ourselves. And that's when the real questions begin to whisper. Why do I still feel tired even after I've rested? Why does life feel heavier now even though I've accomplished so much? Why, no matter how much I plan or prepare, does joy still feel just out of reach? If any of that resonates, I want to offer you something different. Not a formula, not a fix, but a path, a gentler path, one rooted not in force, but in presence. Not in controlling everything, but in letting go of what no longer serves. It's a way of living whispered through the teachings of Buddhism, a wisdom that doesn't shout, it settles. It doesn't demand your performance, it invites your truth. And tonight, in this space, we'll walk that path together. Not to escape life, but to return to it. To rediscover that the stillness we've been chasing out there has been quietly waiting in here all along. So if a quiet part of you is ready to soften, to breathe, to explore a deeper rhythm of being, then stay with me. Let this be a pause in the noise, a sanctuary, not from life, but within it. Let us begin, not with a push, but with a breath. Let go, like the sky releases the storm. Let me take you to a quiet mountainside. High above a noisy village, there lived an old monk. He lived simply, sweeping the stone steps each morning, tending to a tiny garden, and sitting in stillness as the wind whispered through the hills. But once a year, without fail, the storms would come. Thunder would shake the mountains. Rain would pound the rooftop like 1,000 fists. The sky would unleash its fury with a voice that could drown out even your own thoughts. Most people would panic in that kind of storm. They'd run for cover, they'd brace themselves, they'd try to fight it, shut the windows, block the noise, pretend it wasn't happening. But the old monk, he didn't flinch. Instead, he would place his broom gently aside, light a small lantern, and sit by the open window, watching, just watching. One year, a younger monk who had recently arrived from the village asked him, "Master, why do you sit so calmly during the storm? Why don't you take shelter inside the temple's deepest halls?" The old man turned to him, his eyes soft, and simply said, "Because the storm is not something I need to fight. It's something I need to witness, and then let go." He wasn't talking about weather. He was talking about life. You see, most of us live like the villagers, running from anything that feels uncomfortable, chaotic, unpredictable. We grip tightly to what we know. We resist change. We try to control everything, believing that safety lies in having it all figured out. But the sky doesn't hold on to its storms. It doesn't cling to the thunder or analyze every flash of lightning. When the storm has passed, it lets go and returns to stillness. No drama, no guilt, no memory. Just release. And yet, how many storms are we still holding inside? Old arguments that ended years ago. The ache of choices we can't undo. The fear of growing older, of losing control, of not becoming the version of ourselves we thought we'd be by now. We carry these things like heavy clouds, thinking that if we let go, we'll somehow lose a part of ourselves. But what if the opposite is true? What if we only suffer because we refuse to release what's already past? Buddhism teaches that you only lose what you cling to. And when you hear that deeply, it becomes more than a quote. It becomes a way of living. Imagine for a moment how much energy it takes to try and hold the sky shut, to trap every dark cloud inside, to control where the wind goes. It's exhausting. So, let me ask you gently, what storm are you still carrying? What weight are you still gripping long after the winds have died down? Maybe it's an old relationship, a version of yourself you can't seem to forgive, a moment you replay at night when everything else is quiet. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean saying it didn't matter. It means choosing peace over struggle. It means making room. When the sky lets go of the storm, it doesn't become empty. It becomes open. Open for the sun to shine through again. Open for calm to return. Open for something new. There's a Zen koan that says, the tighter you hold the rope, the deeper it cuts. And maybe that's what we're doing without realizing it, tightening the grip on things that were never meant to be held forever. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. It's human to cling. It's natural to want answers, to want resolution, to want control. But maybe, just maybe, the real healing begins with one small act. Not a dramatic goodbye, not a grand gesture, just a soft loosening. A breath, a moment where you say to yourself, I don't need to carry this tonight. So, before we move on, I invite you to pause, right here, right now. Close your eyes if you'd like. Place your hand gently over your heart, and ask yourself, without pressure, without judgment, what storm am I still holding on to? And then, a second question. Could I let it go, just for tonight? Not forever, just for now. Because sometimes that's how it begins. Not with answers, but with the willingness to release. The sky never fears the next storm. It just trusts that whatever comes, it will pass. And so can you. There's a quote from the Buddha that has lingered in my heart for years. Maybe you've heard it too. You only lose what you cling to. At first glance, it sounds simple, but sit with it for a moment, and it begins to unfold like a lotus. Because the truth is, most of what we're afraid of losing isn't even with us anymore. The relationship that ended, the childhood dream that never quite came true, the version of yourself you once tried so hard to become, they're already gone. And yet we carry them in our minds, in our bodies, in the quiet conversations we have with ourselves at night when the lights are out and the world goes still. We think holding on is strength, that letting go is giving up. But what if letting go is the bravest thing you'll ever do? What if peace doesn't come from fighting harder, but from surrendering deeper? In Buddhist teachings, non-attachment isn't about rejection. It's not about caring less. It's about caring clearly, without gripping so tightly that your own joy gets suffocated in the process. Letting go doesn't mean the memory disappears. It doesn't mean the love fades or the lesson vanishes. It means you stop asking the past to explain itself. You stop asking life to be fair in ways it never promised. You stop trying to rearrange what has already been written. And in that space, where control loosens and your hands begin to open, something sacred happens. Peace enters. Not the flashy kind, not the everything's perfect kind, but the quiet, grounded kind of peace that says, I'm still here. I'm still breathing, and that's enough. You see, when we cling, we contract. Our shoulders tighten, our minds race, our hearts close. But when we release, we expand. Our breath deepens, our awareness softens, our spirit rises. It's like cleaning out a cluttered room. You don't realize how much the mess was weighing on you until it's gone, until light comes through the window again and the air feels easier to breathe. So let me ask you something that's not easy. What are you holding on to, not because it serves you, but because you don't know who you'd be without it? Is it a title, a role, a version of success that no longer aligns with your truth? Or maybe it's a story you've told yourself for years about who you are and what your life is supposed to look like. But here's the beauty of being human. You are allowed to change the story. You are allowed to soften, to pause, to set something down, not in defeat, but in wisdom. There's nothing weak about letting go. In fact, it might be the first moment you truly come home to yourself. And I get it. This isn't the world's definition of winning. We're taught to strive, to climb, to achieve, to hold on for dear life. But no one tells us that peace has a different price. Peace asks you to unclench, to trust, to believe that what is meant for you won't require you to suffer endlessly to keep it. So today, maybe the question isn't, what do I need to do? Maybe the question is, what can I finally release? Just one thing, one expectation, one belief, one burden, even just for today. Because when you let go, not in fear, but in faith, you don't become less, you become light. And in that lightness, there's room for something new to bloom. Maybe it's stillness, maybe it's clarity, maybe it's just the quiet relief of no longer carrying what was never yours to hold forever. Watching the mind like a still lake. Let me tell you a story. A student once approached his spiritual teacher, visibly frustrated. "Master," he said, "my thoughts are everywhere. I try to find peace, but the more I try, the more restless I feel." The teacher didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a clear bowl and filled it with water from a nearby stream. Then, without a word, he stirred it vigorously. The water turned cloudy, murky, impossible to see through. He held the bowl up and asked, "Can you see your reflection now?" The student shook his head. The teacher placed the bowl gently on the ground and sat beside it. Slowly, the sediment began to settle. The water cleared. "Now?" the teacher asked. The student nodded. And the teacher smiled. "This is your mind. The more you stir it, the less clarity you have. But when you stop and let it be, it settles on its own." It's such a simple image, isn't it? And yet, it speaks volumes. Because if we're honest, most of us are stirring our own minds constantly. Thoughts, worries, planning, overthinking, comparing, regretting, swirling around like sediment in that bowl. And we wonder why we can't see clearly. But here's the truth most of us were never taught. Clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing less, from stillness, from allowing the mind to settle naturally, like that water in the bowl. Think about it. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to just be? Not scrolling, not fixing, not performing, just being? Our modern world glorifies motion, urgency, hustle. Even healing becomes another task on the to-do list. But the wisdom of Buddhism reminds us that the deepest peace often arrives when we step back, not forward. When we stop trying to chase calm and simply create space for it to rise. You don't force a lake to be still. You wait, you breathe, you watch. And your mind, too, will begin to clear. It's not about shutting out the world or becoming emotionless. It's about seeing your thoughts for what they are, clouds passing through a vast sky, not facts you must obey.
So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, before you reach for the next distraction, try this. Sit, close your eyes. Imagine your thoughts as ripples on a pond, and just observe. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to judge what shows up. Just watch. Because when you observe without interference, you start to realize something profound. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. You are the stillness beneath the waves. And in that realization, a quiet power begins to grow. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to, because it knows the truth. Stillness is not emptiness. It is presence in its most peaceful form.
Learning to observe without holding on. Let me ask you something. When a thought arises, maybe one filled with worry, judgment, or regret, what do you usually do? Do you chase it down, try to fix it, solve it, silence it? Or maybe you resist it, push it away, tell yourself you shouldn't be feeling that way. It's human. We've all been there. But there's another way. And it begins not by trying to control the mind, but by learning to observe it. There's a practice in Buddhism called bare attention. It's a kind of mindful watching. You don't analyze, you don't label, you simply notice. Thoughts come, emotions rise, sensations shift, and you let them, without grabbing on, without pushing away. Imagine sitting by a river. You're not in the water, you're not trying to stop the current. You're just sitting, quietly on the bank, watching leaves float by. That's how it works with the mind too. The more we try to stop our thoughts, the more they pull at us. But when we watch, gently, curiously, they begin to pass. No resistance, no attachment, no story, just awareness. You might think, but if I don't do something, won't I lose control? Actually, the opposite is true. The more you observe without clinging, the more spacious your inner world becomes. You start to realize not every thought deserves a reaction. Not every emotion needs a solution. Some things just need to be seen. That's it. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You just need to stop feeding them. There's a story in Zen tradition about a student who said, "My mind is a mess. How do I calm it down?" And the teacher replied, "Sit down, watch it, don't try to change it. Just observe, like you would watch clouds drifting through the sky. No judgment, no fixing, just presence." So how do you begin? Start small. Sit for 5 minutes. No phone, no agenda. Just you, your breath, and your awareness. You'll notice your mind will wander. That's not a mistake. It's part of the practice. Each time it does, gently return to observing, like a kind parent, guiding a child, not with harshness, but with softness. You might say to yourself, there's a thought about work. Here comes some tension in my shoulders. I feel sadness in my chest. And then you let it be. You don't try to fix it. You don't dive into the story. You let it rise. You let it fall. And something beautiful happens. The more you witness without clinging, the more peace rises on its own. Not because you forced it, but because you finally created space for it. This is the quiet power of non-attachment. It's not cold. It's not indifferent. It's tender. It says, "I see you, thought. I see you, emotion, but I don't need to become you." And from that place, you begin to live. With clarity. You respond instead of react. You breathe instead of brace. You rest in awareness instead of wrestling with what is. So today, I invite you to try. Find a quiet spot. Sit down, close your eyes, and just watch. No fixing, no changing, just presence. Let the thoughts drift like leaves on a stream. Let the emotions rise and fall like waves on the shore. And remember, you are not the storm. You are the sky holding it. Spacious, untouched, unmoved, and always, always enough. Aligning your energy like a compass, finding true north. Let me share a quiet story with you. There was once a gardener who planted the same seeds in 2 different patches of earth. One in the open field where the soil had been prepared with care, soft, nourished, full of sunlight. and the other in a forgotten corner, where the ground was dry, compacted, untouched for years. Weeks passed. In the open field, green shoots began to emerge. Life unfolded, gently, effortlessly. But in the corner patch, nothing grew. The gardener checked the seeds. They were the same. He checked the water, the sun. All conditions seemed equal. But the soil, the inner foundation, was not. Because no matter how perfect the seed, it cannot bloom in soil that's not ready to receive it. And the same is true for us. You see, so many of us spend our lives trying to change what's outside. We chase new routines, we search for the right job, the right partner, the right place to live, hoping that something will finally click, finally bloom. But here's the truth no one tells us. Your outer life is always reflecting your inner soil. If the energy within you is chaotic, depleted, scattered, it doesn't matter how many good things you try to plant. They won't take root. And if your energy is calm, centered, and open, even the smallest seed of intention can grow into something beautiful. This is why, in Buddhism, the focus isn't on fixing the world around you, but on aligning your energy within. Because your energy is like a compass. When it's calibrated, when it's grounded in stillness, presence, and self-awareness, it naturally points you towards what's right, toward your true north. But when it's overwhelmed by fear, resentment, or exhaustion, that compass spins. And suddenly, you're not walking your path. You're just wandering. So let me ask you, what kind of energy are you moving from today? Is it grounded or grasping? Is it peaceful or proving? Are you making choices from alignment or from a place of fear? It's a hard question, but an honest one. Because every action we take is like planting a seed, and the energy behind it, the soil, is what determines whether that seed will grow or wither. Think about it. Have you ever said yes to something just to avoid conflict and ended up drained? Have you ever forced a goal, pushed it through with tension and control, only to find it falling apart the moment you stopped holding it so tightly? That's not failure. That's feedback. It's life whispering, check your soil, recalibrate your energy. Because when your energy is aligned, you don't have to force things. You don't have to beg for results. You simply plant, you water, you wait, and life responds. So how do you align your energy? You begin by getting quiet. You pause. You breathe deeply and ask, is this coming from truth or from fear, from love or from lack? And you listen. You start to choose stillness over urgency, presence over pressure, awareness over automatic reaction. And slowly, like that quiet garden in the sun, your life begins to shift. You attract what you're ready for. You recognize what no longer fits. You stop chasing and start allowing. Because your energy speaks louder than your effort. And when it's aligned, even in silence, it guides you home. Cultivating compassion from within. So now that we've talked about aligning your energy, like tuning a compass toward true north, let's explore what happens when that alignment is grounded not just in stillness, but in compassion. There's a practice in Buddhism called metta, or loving-kindness meditation. It might sound poetic or even mystical, but at its core, it's simple, profoundly simple. Metta is the act of sending love, not outward first, but inward. It begins with the self. Because how can we offer peace to the world if we haven't first learned how to be gentle with ourselves? In this practice, you sit quietly. You bring your attention to your heart, and you silently repeat, "May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease." It might feel strange at first, even uncomfortable. Many of us have spent years criticizing ourselves, pushing, judging, comparing. But metta invites something new, a softening, a homecoming. And as you continue to repeat those words, something inside begins to shift. The energy around you starts to soften. You begin to relate to yourself not as a project to fix, but as a being worthy of love. And here's the beauty. What begins within naturally extends outward. Once you've practiced sending love to yourself, you gently expand the circle to someone you care about, then to someone neutral, then, even harder, to someone you struggle with. Not because you're excusing their actions, but because you're choosing not to carry the poison of resentment in your own heart. This is the power of metta. It doesn't demand that the world change. It invites you to change the way you show up in it, to move through life with a lighter heart, a clearer mind, a more open presence. Because when your energy is rooted in compassion, everything begins to feel softer. Decisions become easier, not because life is simple, but because you are clear. Relationships become smoother, not because everyone else changes, but because you're no longer reacting from fear or reactivity. Even the challenges you face begin to feel more manageable, because you're meeting them with groundedness, not resistance. This is what it means to live in energetic alignment. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming present. And in that presence, you discover something most of us spend years searching for in all the wrong places: a quiet joy. A joy that isn't dependent on external achievements or flawless outcomes. A joy that rises from within, because you're no longer fighting yourself. So if you're feeling disconnected, restless, uncertain about your next step, maybe don't start with a plan. Start with compassion. Sit for a moment today. Close your eyes, place your hand over your heart, and whisper, softly, sincerely, "May I be well," and see what unfolds from there. Because sometimes the path forward isn't about pushing harder. It's about softening inward. And when your inner energy shifts, life responds. Not always instantly, not always dramatically, but gently, gracefully, consistently. Like water finding its way, like a compass quietly pointing you home.
Trusting the flow, like the river trusts the sea. Let me tell you a story about patience. There was a woman who dreamed of growing a bamboo grove near her home. She had read that bamboo, once rooted, would grow tall and strong, fast, almost overnight. But she also knew the truth behind the myth. For the first few years, there would be nothing. So she prepared the soil. She planted the seeds. She watered them, day after day, month after month, year after year. For 5 long years, nothing broke the surface, not even a single shoot. Friends questioned her, neighbors mocked her, even her own mind whispered doubts. Maybe the seeds were bad, maybe this isn't meant to be. But still, she showed up, watering, nurturing, trusting. And then, one spring morning, the earth cracked open. Within weeks, shoots began to rise, taller than she had ever imagined. In just 6 weeks, the bamboo grew over 80 feet. But the truth is, it hadn't grown in 6 weeks. It had been growing all along, underground, rooting, anchoring, preparing for its rise. And maybe, just maybe, your life is like that too. You've been planting seeds in silence, watering them with every small act of courage, every quiet decision to keep going, even when no one noticed. And maybe you're in that in-between space right now, where nothing visible is blooming, where doubt creeps in and patience wears thin. But what if growth doesn't always look like progress? What if the most important part of your journey is happening underground? We live in a culture obsessed with speed, with proof, with instant results. But nature, real transformation, doesn't work like that. The river doesn't rush to the sea. It meanders, it curves, it pauses, and still it arrives. The same is true for us. Buddhist philosophy teaches us that life unfolds in its own rhythm, that forcing the outcome is like shouting at a flower to bloom. it only closes tighter. But when we learn to trust the process, to show up with patience, to water our lives gently even when nothing shows, something shifts. Not immediately, but eventually. The roots grow stronger, the path becomes clearer, and what once felt stuck begins to move. So I ask you, what seeds have you planted that you've almost given up on? Is it healing? A creative dream? A relationship you're trying to rebuild? A version of yourself you're still learning to believe in? Whatever it is, don't abandon it just because it hasn't bloomed yet. Not everything that matters shows up right away. Sometimes the most meaningful growth is the quietest. And just because you can't see the progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. So today, I invite you to pause, to breathe, to remember. You don't need to force your becoming. You just need to keep showing up. Like water to soil, like the river to the sea, quiet, steady, trusting. Because the roots you've planted may be preparing to rise in ways you cannot yet imagine.
Trusting the process, not demanding the outcome. Let's take a breath together and consider a truth that's both comforting and deeply challenging. You don't have to control the river. You only need to learn how to float. That's one of my favorite teachings, simple but powerful. Because so much of our suffering comes not from what life brings us, but from how tightly we try to grip it. We want answers before the lesson is finished, results before the roots are ready, a clear map when the road is still forming. We've been taught to believe that control is the path to peace. But what if peace comes from releasing that control? You see, in Buddhism, there's a beautiful emphasis on trusting the process, rather than demanding the outcome. This doesn't mean you stop caring, or that you give up on your goals. It means you stop measuring your worth or your happiness by whether things are happening exactly the way you planned. Because life doesn't always follow your schedule. You may pour your heart into something, a relationship, a project, a healing journey, and feel like nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, something often is. Your energy is shifting. Your awareness is deepening. Your soul is preparing to receive what your mind can't yet understand. And when you push too hard for the outcome, when you demand certainty, you actually block the very flow that's trying to carry you forward. So what does it look like to live differently? To live with trust? It looks like showing up every day, not to get something, but to be present for something. It means letting go of the constant need to evaluate. Is this working yet? And instead asking, am I aligned with what matters? It's like tending a garden. You plant, you water, you protect it from weeds. But you don't tug at the seed every day, asking it why it hasn't grown yet. You trust the soil. You trust the sun. You trust that life moves in rhythms you don't have to control. So let me ask you gently, where in your life are you holding too tightly to the outcome? Is it in your work, your health, your self-growth? Are you exhausting yourself trying to shape every detail? And what would it feel like to soften your grip? To trust that your efforts matter, even if they haven't bloomed yet? To believe that the current is carrying you, even if the destination isn't clear? This is not passive. It's not resignation. It's wisdom. It's the deep, quiet strength of knowing that your job is to participate, not to dominate. To be in flow, not in force. Because when you stop trying to control the river, you start to feel its rhythm. You begin to move with grace, with faith, with a kind of peace that doesn't depend on outcomes. So today, let this be your reminder. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to control every twist and turn. You are not falling behind. You are in the current, and the current knows the way. Empty like bamboo, so the wind can pass through. There's a well-known Zen story you may have heard before. A student, eager to learn, visits a master known for his wisdom. As the two sit down together, the master begins to pour tea into the student's cup. It fills and keeps filling. Soon, the tea overflows, spilling onto the table, dripping to the floor. The student watches in confusion until finally blurting out, "Stop! The cup is full. It can't hold any more." The master looks up, smiles gently, and says, "Exactly. And you, like this cup, are too full to receive anything new." It's a simple story, but it holds a powerful truth. We cannot receive insight, peace, or transformation if we're already overflowing with what no longer serves us. Think about that for a moment. How often are we walking through life full of expectations, assumptions, old narratives, pride, past pain, the constant hum of should and must? We hold on so tightly to who we think we're supposed to be, to how we think life should unfold, to old stories we tell ourselves about failure, about worth, about what's possible. But here's the paradox. The more we cling, the less space we have for real change. In Buddhist thought, this letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the conscious decision to create space, not as emptiness, but as openness. Just like bamboo. If you look closely at bamboo, you'll notice it's hollow inside. And that's not a flaw, it's the very reason it bends with the wind and doesn't break. It moves with life. It allows space for energy to pass through. It's resilient not because it's rigid, but because it's empty in the right places. Can you imagine what it would feel like to be that light? To release what's weighing you down, not because it's bad, but because it no longer fits the person you're becoming. What thoughts have you outgrown? What stories do you keep replaying that only echo limitation? What inner clutter needs to be gently released so that something truer can take its place? Letting go is not a loss, it's an opening. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself isn't to try harder, but to carry less, to clear the cup, to exhale the need for control, to trust that space itself is fertile ground, that in the clearing something wiser can emerge. So here's a gentle invitation for today. Take a quiet moment, sit still, breathe deep, and ask yourself, what am I full of right now? And, more importantly, what am I willing to release to make space for peace? You don't need to empty it all at once. Even one breath of letting go is enough to begin. Because the moment you create space, truly, consciously, life begins to pour in. Not the noise, not the chaos, but clarity, ease, and a deeper connection to who you really are beneath all that noise. Like bamboo in the wind, rooted, flexible, and ready. The strength of bending. How emptiness becomes power. If you've ever seen a bamboo forest during a storm, you'll notice something extraordinary. While towering trees snap and rigid branches break, the bamboo bends. It sways with the wind, almost dancing with the storm. And when the sky's clear, it's still standing. Why? Because it doesn't resist the force. It flows with it. That's the wisdom of the bamboo. And it's a lesson we often forget in our own lives. You see, we're taught to be strong by being unshakable, to stand our ground, to hold firm, to push through. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is bend, not break, not retreat, just soften. Let life pass through you, not in surrender, but in trust. And what allows bamboo to bend without breaking is its emptiness inside. It's hollow, but not weak. That space, what might seem like nothingness, is actually what gives it resilience. It's what makes it flexible, adaptable, alive. Now ask yourself, in your own life, where have you confused strength with tension? Where are you holding so tightly, trying to control, trying to force, that you've forgotten how to flow? The more full we are of ego, expectation, fear, the more rigid we become, and the more likely we are to snap when life doesn't go our way. But when we allow space within, true space, like the bamboo, we gain a different kind of strength. The strength to adapt, to begin again, to stay rooted even when everything around us changes. In Buddhist philosophy, this space, this emptiness, isn't a void, it's potential. It's the fertile ground where insight, creativity, and compassion take root. It's like an empty bowl waiting to be filled, not with noise, but with meaning. And the beauty is, you don't need to go somewhere special to find that space. You already have it. It's in the pause between your breaths. It's in the silence between your thoughts. It's in those quiet moments when you stop trying to prove and simply allow yourself to be. So here's a gentle reflection. What would happen if you let yourself bend just a little today? Not collapse, not give up, just soften. In that softness, you'll begin to feel what the bamboo knows, that flexibility is strength, that emptiness is not the absence of power, but the presence of possibility. And when life pushes, you don't have to push back. You can move with grace. You can return to center. You can remain rooted and rise again. Just like bamboo. Just like you. The thunder of silence, where wisdom rests. Let me tell you a story. A fierce warrior once visited a renowned Zen master. The warrior had conquered lands, commanded armies, and was known for his strength. But he had one question that no sword could answer. Standing before the master, he asked, "Tell me, what is the difference between heaven and hell?" The master looked him in the eye and said, You're nothing but a brute. You couldn't possibly understand wisdom." The warrior's face turned red with rage. His hand reached for his sword. "How dare you speak to me that way?" he growled. And just then, the master calmly said, "That is hell." The warrior froze. Something shifted. He lowered his sword and bowed his head. With tears in his eyes, he whispered, "And this is heaven?" The master smiled silently. That's the story, and within its silence is the teaching, because the loudest lessons in life are often delivered without sound. We live in a world that celebrates noise, speaking louder, moving faster, doing more. But in Buddhist tradition, it's the stillness beneath the surface that reveals the deepest truths. Silence is not the absence of something, it's the presence of everything. When a Zen master remains silent, it's not because they have nothing to say, it's because they know that words can only go so far. Silence invites you to meet the wisdom within yourself. And here's the thing most people overlook. In a world that pressures you to prove, to defend, to perform, choosing silence is an act of immense inner strength. It's the strength to not react, to not fight every battle, to not explain your worth to those who refuse to see it. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means presence. It means awareness. It means you are no longer controlled by every passing thought or emotion. You're rooted like a mountain, calm while storms pass overhead. So ask yourself, when was the last time you let silence speak for you? When was the last time you paused before replying, listened instead of reacting, softened instead of bracing? Because in those quiet moments, something opens. You hear your intuition. You sense your truth. You feel a deeper rhythm guiding you, not the rhythm of fear, but of knowing. There's a saying in Zen, thunder is silent before it strikes. And perhaps that's what your soul is asking of you now. Not more noise, more answers, more doing, but the courage to be still, to sit, to breathe, to let silence teach what words cannot. And in that space, you may just discover the wisdom you've been searching for was never out there. It's always been here,
quiet, steady, waiting.
Stillness is not stopping, it's seeing clearly. Let's take a deep breath together. And pause. Not to escape life, but to see it more clearly. Because here's a truth we often overlook in today's go, go, go world. Stillness isn't the absence of motion, it's the presence of clarity. We've been conditioned to believe that if we're not constantly moving, doing, achieving, we're falling behind. But what if real progress doesn't always come from forward motion? What if the most powerful step you can take is to stop? Not forever, not in resignation, just for a moment, just long enough to hear yourself again. You see, in the Buddhist tradition, silence and stillness are not retreats from life. They are tools to re-enter life more awake, more grounded, and more alive. Have you ever noticed how the clearest water is the water that's still? The more it's stirred, the cloudier it gets. Our minds are no different. When we never stop to breathe, to sit, to center, our thoughts churn, we get reactive, we lose perspective. But the moment we stop, truly stop, clarity begins to return. We begin to see what actually matters, what's real, what's just noise, and what's quietly calling for our attention. Stillness gives birth to discernment, to wisdom, to action that is aligned, not just active. So let me offer you something small but sacred, a practice. Nothing complicated, just this. Pause. Breathe in, breathe out, and wait. Don't force clarity. Let it rise. Don't demand an answer. Let it arrive. Because in the space between breaths, something deeper begins to speak. Maybe it tells you to rest. Maybe it nudges you toward a long overdue change. Maybe it just says, "You're okay. Keep going." Whatever it is, it comes not in the noise, but in the quiet. And that quiet isn't empty. It's full of life, of intuition, of power. In today's world, it takes real courage to pause, to stop scrolling, to sit with yourself, to choose depth over speed. But I promise you, every time you pause with presence, you're not falling behind. You're actually coming home. Home to yourself. Home to the calm that doesn't crumble when life gets loud. So today, take one breath. Let that breath become a moment. Let that moment become a choice. And let that choice lead you not to more hustle, but to more honest living. Because stillness isn't the end of the path. It's the ground from which the right path begins. Cleaning the inner mirror. Seeing the world with new eyes. There's a quiet story I want to share with you. It's about a young woman who came to live at a Buddhist monastery seeking peace. Like many of us, she had felt overwhelmed by the world, its chaos, its pain, its confusion. She thought that by coming to the monastery, she would escape all that. But instead of being handed ancient scrolls or sitting in long, profound meditations, her teacher gave her a simple daily task: clean the mirrors. That's it. Day after day, she would wake up early and wipe the dust, the fingerprints, the fog from every mirror in the temple. Weeks passed. And finally, in quiet frustration, she asked her teacher, "Why am I spending all my time cleaning glass? I came here to clear my mind." The teacher smiled and gently replied, "Exactly. The mirrors are your mind. As you wipe away the dust from their surface, you begin to notice the smudges on your own reflection." That one sentence changed everything for her. Because the truth is, we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. When our inner world is cloudy, with fear, with past wounds, with unresolved pain, we project that haze onto everything we encounter. We misread people's intentions. We assume danger where there is none. We repeat the same stories not because they're true, but because they're familiar. And yet, the outer world is only ever reflecting what's going on inside. You see this all the time.
Two people can experience the exact same moment, but walk away with completely different stories. One sees threat, the other sees opportunity. One sees rejection, the other sees redirection. What's the difference? The clarity of the mirror, the stillness of the mind, the healing of the heart. So here's the deeper question. When was the last time you cleaned the mirror of your own mind? Not by force, not by judgment, but with patience, with tenderness, with awareness. In Buddhist practice, this mirror isn't just a metaphor. It's a daily reminder that the work we do within, every breath we take in silence, every wound we choose to feel and release, changes the way we relate to everything around us. When we clean our inner mirror, we stop reacting from our pain and start responding from our presence. We see people more clearly. We soften our judgments. We become less defensive, less guarded, and more open to life as it really is. So maybe today, your task isn't to solve the world. Maybe it's simply to sit in front of your own reflection and begin to gently wipe the glass, to notice what stories are lingering, to ask what's still unhealed, to offer yourself compassion instead of criticism, because the world you see is the mirror you carry, and the more light you allow inside, the more beauty you'll begin to see everywhere.
Peace begins with compassion for yourself. Let's pause for a moment and ask something we rarely stop to consider. When was the last time you truly treated yourself with compassion? Not just a spa day, not just a break, but real, honest, heart-deep compassion. The kind that whispers, "You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of peace." So many of us go through life carrying invisible burdens, old stories we've outgrown, beliefs we never chose, expectations we can't meet. And somewhere along the way, we begin to confuse self-discipline with self-punishment. We push harder, we criticize more, we hold ourselves to impossible standards. But here's the truth that Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us. Peace doesn't begin when you finally fix yourself. It begins the moment you stop waging war on your own heart. Imagine speaking to yourself the way you'd speak to a dear friend. You wouldn't shame them for being tired. You wouldn't call them weak for needing rest. You wouldn't judge them for their wounds. You'd honor their healing. So why do we deny ourselves that same kindness? Why do we let limiting beliefs, the quiet voices that say you're not enough or you don't deserve rest, define our sense of worth? It's time to let them go. Not because they're evil, but because they're outdated. They were built by fear, maintained by habit, but they don't serve who you are becoming. You are not broken. You are becoming. And every act of gentleness toward yourself, every breath of grace, every moment of patience is a thread that reweaves your relationship with life. There's a phrase in Buddhist practice, metta begins within. Metta means loving kindness, but it doesn't start with how you treat others. It begins with how you treat you. Because when you meet your own pain with softness, when you forgive yourself even without all the answers, when you choose rest instead of resentment, you begin to feel something subtle but powerful shift inside. That's peace. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that frees your breath, relaxes your chest, and lets your soul exhale. And the beautiful truth is, this peace isn't somewhere far away. It's always been here, waiting behind the noise, waiting beneath the judgment, waiting for you to remember. You are worthy of compassion, even when you're lost, especially when you're healing. So today, if nothing else, let yourself be held by your own heart, gently, quietly, like a mirror finally free of dust. Let your inner light return.
Thoughts as light as feathers on water. Let me tell you a story. There once was a man who stood frozen before a bridge.
It wasn't broken. It wasn't old. It wasn't even particularly high. But still he couldn't move. His legs trembled, his palms sweat, his heart raced as if he were standing on the edge of a cliff. To the people nearby, it made no sense. But to him, it felt like life or death. He was convinced, absolutely convinced, that the bridge would collapse the moment he stepped on it. Now here's the twist. That bridge had held hundreds of people before him. It had been tested, reinforced, proven safe again and again. But logic didn't matter, because fear doesn't speak in facts. It whispers in what-ifs. What if it breaks? What if I fall? What if I don't survive? That man eventually turned around and walked away, never knowing that the bridge would have held him, because the fear didn't come from the bridge. It came from his mind. And isn't that true for so many of us? We carry fears that feel enormous. Fears of failure, rejection, loss, being seen, not being enough. But when we look closely, many of them are just bridges in our minds. Solid, stable, but painted with illusion. Buddhism teaches us something gentle but profound. Most of what we fear will never happen. And even if it does, it's not the fear itself, but our clinging to it that hurts the most. So the real question is, what are you not crossing because of a fear that isn't real? What dreams are waiting on the other side of a story your mind keeps telling you? It's easy to confuse caution with truth, to think that because a thought is loud, it must be real. But thoughts are like feathers on water. They float, they drift, and if you don't cling to them, they pass. You don't have to silence your fear. You only need to recognize it for what it is, a visitor, not a verdict. And when you see it clearly, without judgment or resistance, you can begin to move anyway, with soft steps, with open eyes, with the quiet strength that says, yes, I'm scared, but I won't let fear become my compass. Because here's the deeper truth. The bridge is rarely the problem. It's the storm of thoughts we carry across it. So what if today, instead of fighting your fear, you simply watched it float by, like a feather on still water, gentle, light, powerless once you stop holding on.
Observing your thoughts like leaves on a stream. Take a deep breath with me. Now, imagine this. You're sitting beside a quiet stream. The water is calm, steady, flowing gently over smooth stones. And on that surface, every so often, a leaf floats by. Some big, some small, some bright, some faded. You don't reach out to grab them. You don't chase after them. You simply watch them pass. This, right here, is one of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism. To observe your thoughts like leaves on a stream. To witness without attachment. To allow without reacting. You see, most of our suffering doesn't come from the thoughts themselves. It comes from clinging to them. We don't just have a negative thought, we dive into it. We analyze it, replay it, argue with it, believe it. And in doing so, we become entangled in a story that was never meant to define us. But what if there was another way? What if every thought that passed through your mind wasn't a command, but a cloud? Something you could notice, name, and release. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it's true. And just because it feels urgent doesn't mean it deserves your energy. Freedom doesn't come from controlling your thoughts. It comes from changing your relationship with them. Instead of reacting, we respond. Instead of spiraling, we soften. Instead of gripping, we let go. And what's left in that space is something we rarely give ourselves: peace. When your thoughts become lighter, your entire life becomes lighter. Decisions feel clearer, relationships feel easier. Even the noise of the world seems to quiet down, because you are no longer adding to it inside. This is the kind of freedom that no one else can give you. It doesn't come from approval or achievement. It comes from presence, from noticing that a thought is just a thought, and then letting it drift by. So the next time your mind begins to race, pause. Imagine that quiet stream again. See the thought as a leaf. Say to yourself, I don't have to follow this. I can watch it float. I am not this thought. I am the space it passes through. Because you are not your worries. You are the sky behind them. And when you learn to think gently, you begin to live gently. That's not weakness. That's wisdom.
Waiting for the bloom like a lotus in the mud. Let me tell you a quiet truth. Not all growth is visible. Sometimes the most important things are happening beneath the surface, unseen, unheard, but deeply alive. There's a story from Buddhist tradition about a lotus seed. Buried deep in the mud of a still pond, it waits. Not for days, not for weeks, but sometimes for years. No one sees it. No one praises it. No one even knows it's there. But underground, something sacred is unfolding. The seed is preparing. It's gathering strength. It's growing roots, anchoring itself in the earth, finding stability in the dark. And only when the time is right, only when the roots are deep enough, does the lotus begin to rise, pushing through the mud, reaching toward the light, emerging quietly as one of the most beautiful flowers on earth. Now pause and ask yourself, what if you are in that underground season? What if this moment in your life, where things feel slow, uncertain, maybe even stuck, is not a mistake, but a rooting? What if it's not your time to bloom yet, because your soul is still laying the foundation for something greater? You see, we live in a world that glorifies speed, faster, bigger, now. But the lotus doesn't bloom on demand. It blooms on trust. And in Buddhism, that trust is sacred. It's the understanding that life unfolds in its own rhythm, that some seasons are not about results, but about deep, invisible transformation, rooting before rising, becoming before blooming. So if you're in a space right now where it feels like nothing's happening, don't panic, don't rush, don't compare, just breathe. And remember, just because you don't see the growth doesn't mean it isn't there. You are still becoming, still evolving, still anchoring yourself in wisdom, in patience, in the soil of experience. And one day, maybe quietly, maybe suddenly, you'll rise. Not because you forced it, but because you were ready. So trust your roots. Let them grow deep, even if no one sees them, because the bloom that lasts is the one that grows from stillness. Trusting the preparation beneath the surface. Let's take a breath together. Because maybe what you need right now isn't more speed, but more trust. We live in a culture that says, if it's not happening fast, it must be wrong. If you can't measure it, it must not matter. But spiritual growth doesn't follow that logic. Just like the lotus we spoke of before, not every day is meant for blooming. Some days, and even some years, are meant for becoming, for quietly preparing you for the life you haven't yet stepped into. So if you feel like your progress is slow, if you catch yourself thinking, why isn't it happening yet? Or if you're tempted to dig up your dreams just to see if they're sprouting, pause. Because here's the truth. It's not that you're moving too slowly. It's that something deeper is being prepared. In Buddhism, there's a quiet teaching that reminds us, you don't help a flower grow by pulling on it. In fact, doing so may damage it. The same goes for your journey. When you constantly question, compare, or overanalyze your inner work, you're like a gardener digging up the seed every morning, wondering why it hasn't bloomed. But seeds don't grow through force. They grow through faith. And your soul is the same. It needs space, it needs patience, and most of all, it needs your presence.
Because when you stay present, without rushing, without forcing, you begin to notice something powerful. Small shifts, subtle insights, moments of calm where there used to be chaos. These are signs that your roots are growing stronger, that you're becoming more grounded, more aligned. So the next time doubt whispers, "Why am I not further along?" answer it gently. I am not behind. I am being prepared. Because when the time is right, when your roots are deep and your spirit is steady, you won't just rise, you'll bloom. Not rushed, not forced, but naturally, beautifully, and in full alignment with who you truly are. Until then, stay present, nurture your soil, and trust the process. The most sacred things in life take time.
Acting from peace, not panic. Before we rush to act, before we speak, decide, or leap, there's one simple but powerful question we often forget to ask. Where is this action coming from? Is it coming from stillness or from fear? From clarity or from chaos? There's a beautiful story in Buddhist tradition that begins not with words, but with a gesture. A monk sits quietly with a cup of tea. The student beside him asks for guidance. He's overwhelmed, anxious, desperate to do something. The monk smiles gently and begins to pour tea into the student's cup. It fills, and soon overflows, spilling everywhere. The student jumps up, startled. "Why are you overfilling the cup?" The monk replies calmly, "Like this cup, your mind is too full. You must first empty yourself before you can receive anything new." This story isn't just about tea. It's about presence, about the energy that fuels our actions. You see, most of us are taught to act fast, to fix, to solve, to move, to hustle. But action that comes from panic, from urgency, from fear, often creates more noise than clarity. It's like trying to pour tea into a shaking cup. Nothing lands and everything spills. But when we act from peace, when we wait just long enough to hear the stillness underneath the storm, something shifts. Decisions become wiser. Words carry more weight. Movements become more meaningful because they're not reactions, they're responses. And that's the shift Buddhism invites us to make. Not to stop acting, but to act from a different place, a deeper place. So the next time you're about to send that email, make that phone call, say those words you might regret. Pause. Ask yourself gently, is this action coming from peace or is it coming from fear? That one question can change the direction of your entire day. Because peace isn't passive. Peace is power. And when your actions arise from that power, from a calm, grounded, centered space, you're no longer being pulled by life. You begin to lead it.
The power of presence in action. There's something remarkable that happens when your actions no longer come from a place of fear, but from a place of stillness. They land differently. They don't ripple chaos, they ripple calm. Have you ever walked into a room where someone spoke slowly, moved deliberately, and simply felt grounded? Even without saying much, their presence alone shifted the energy of the space? That's not coincidence. That's the power of action rooted in peace. In today's world, urgency is praised. We're taught that quick responses, constant busyness, and multitasking equal strength. But the truth is, real strength isn't frantic. It's not noisy. It's not forceful. It's present. And presence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing one thing fully, deeply, intentionally. When we're present, our words carry clarity. When we're present, our actions align with our values, not our fears. It's the kind of calm that doesn't just change what we do, it changes how we show up in life. Here's the paradox. When you rush, you often create more disorder. But when you slow down, ground yourself, and act from peace, things begin to flow more smoothly, more efficiently, and with far less resistance. Why? Because the energy behind your action matters. When your heart is calm, your choices are clean. When your mind is still, your direction becomes clear.
This is what Buddhism reminds us again and again, that peace is not the absence of action, it is the foundation of right action. So if you're in a season of your life where everything feels loud, fast, or uncertain, try this. Don't ask, what should I do next? Instead, ask, how can I be more present right now? Because the deeper truth is this: from presence comes power, from presence comes peace, and from peace comes a kind of action that doesn't just move things forward, it transforms everything it touches.
Let life drift like clouds in the sky. Let me tell you a quiet story. There was once a monk sweeping leaves in the monastery garden. It was a calm morning, and the sun gently touched the earth. But just as he finished cleaning the last patch, a gust of wind swept through, scattering more leaves across the path he had just cleared. Another monk saw this and asked, "Why keep sweeping when the wind will just bring more leaves?" The old monk paused, smiled gently, and said, "Because my peace doesn't depend on the wind." That answer says everything. So many of us go through life trying to tidy every corner, emotionally, mentally, physically, only to be frustrated when life doesn't cooperate. A plan falls apart. A person we love disappoints us. An old memory resurfaces just when we thought we had let it go. And like the wind through the trees, emotions come: anger, sadness, joy, fear. But here's the truth. We suffer most not because the emotions come, but because we try to hold on to them. We replay the same scene over and over in our heads. We grip tightly to what was said, what wasn't done, what we lost. But have you ever looked up at the sky? The clouds roll by. They don't stay. They don't ask your permission. They just move. And when we stop trying to trap the clouds, when we simply let them pass, we begin to taste a quiet kind of freedom. This is the practice: to feel without clinging, to witness without judgment, to act without needing the world to behave on our terms. Imagine this. What if your inner peace wasn't built on control, but on acceptance? What if you could meet each moment, pleasant or painful, with the same grace the monk had? Sweeping gently, letting the wind blow, smiling anyway. Because in the end, life will always bring more leaves, more emotions, more change. But when we stop resisting that truth, we stop suffering, and we begin to live softly, deeply, and with the kind of peace that no gust of wind can ever take away. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. Let me ask you something. What are you still holding on to that it's time to let go of? Maybe it's a resentment, a past regret, a belief that you're not enough. Or maybe it's just the silent pressure to be someone you're not. Whatever it is, pause for a moment and feel it. Now, ask yourself this simple but powerful question. What am I still holding that is quietly holding me back? This is a question from Buddhist meditation practice, not to answer with your mind, but to feel with your heart. So many of us live our lives like we're trying to control the weather. We fight the storms. We chase the sunshine. We run from the clouds. We hope for calm, but fear the rain. But here's the deeper truth. You are not the clouds. You are not the thunder. You are not the fleeting winds. You are the sky. Spacious, vast, unchanging in its essence, no matter what appears and disappears within it. This realization shifts everything. When you remember that you are the sky, you no longer need to grip onto every cloud of fear or every passing thought of doubt. You no longer need to chase happiness or avoid sadness. You just hold space for it all with compassion. A thought comes, let it drift. An emotion rises, let it be felt, not fed.
A fear whispers, acknowledge it, then let it go, like wind through an open window. You see, true freedom isn't in avoiding the rain. It's in realizing that the rain has no power over the sky, that the storm may shake your branches, but it cannot uproot your being. And in this space, in this knowing, you'll find a peace that is steady even when life is not. So today, let this be your quiet practice. Don't ask how to stop the rain. Don't wait for the perfect day. Instead, sit in the vastness of who you are. The one who watches, the one who holds, the one who simply is. Because the more you let go of the illusion that you must control it all, the more you return to what you've always been. Not the weather, but the wide, open, limitless sky.
Live as if the universe has already said yes. Let me tell you a story. There was once a small bird who had lived its entire life on a single branch. It had wings, but had never used them. Why would it? The branch felt safe. The view from there was enough. Comfortable, predictable, familiar. Until one day, the branch broke. And for the first time, the bird had to trust something it never had before. Its wings. And that's when it learned. It wasn't the branch that ever kept it safe. It was the power it always carried within. Now pause here. How many of us are just like that bird? Waiting for proof before we trust. Waiting for certainty before we leap. Waiting for life to promise us a net before we dare to take the first step off the edge. But here's the truth that Buddhist philosophy whispers through time. Faith doesn't come after certainty. It comes before. We don't leap because we know. We leap, and in doing so, we become someone who knows. Real transformation doesn't happen in the safety of our comfort zones. It happens in that sacred space between fear and flight, between letting go of control and discovering we were meant to soar. So here's a gentle but radical question. What would it look like if you lived as if the universe had already said yes to you? Not later, not when you're more ready, but right now. What dreams would you revive? What truths would you speak out loud? What steps would you take without needing permission? Sometimes life breaks the branch not to punish you, but to remind you that you were never meant to live perched in fear. You were built to fly. So today, maybe faith is not a feeling, but a practice. Not something you wait for, but something you live through. One breath, one choice, one quiet yes to the unknown. And maybe that's when your wings finally remember. They were never broken, only waiting.
Walk as if life is lifting you. Now take a breath with me. What if, just for a moment, you let yourself believe that life isn't working against you, but for you? That behind every delay, every detour, every no you've heard, there's actually a deeper yes quietly waiting to unfold. You see, most of us move through the world bracing for impact, as if life is something we have to fight through, survive, or constantly prove ourselves to. But what if we reversed that? What if we lived as if everything was already aligned to support us? That every conversation, every closed door, every moment of stillness wasn't random, but placed on your path with care to lift you, shape you, guide you. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about trust, not the naive kind, but a deep trust rooted in presence. Not blind faith in outcomes, but a grounded knowing that the river knows its way. Imagine waking up each morning not with dread, but with quiet confidence. I may not know what's coming, but I know I'll be carried. What kind of energy would that give you? How would your shoulders soften? Your breath deepen? Faith isn't about controlling what happens. It's about choosing how you meet it. When you believe the universe is conspiring to guide you, not punish you, you stop forcing life to follow your script and instead start dancing with it.
You begin to notice the signs, the gentle nudges, the whispers of timing, the synchronicities too precise to be coincidences. You stop trying to bulldoze your way forward, and you start listening. Because here's the truth. When you trust life, life starts trusting you back. And in that space of mutual trust, a softness returns. A gentleness enters your journey. You begin walking not with fear, but with flow. Not chasing, but allowing. Not grasping, but receiving. So if you're waiting for a sign, maybe this is it. Let yourself walk as if the path is rising to meet you. Let yourself trust that you're not behind. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Let yourself breathe like the world is safe to live in. Because when you walk in faith, life walks with you.
Returning to yourself through stillness. So let me ask you something. What if peace doesn't come from having all the answers, but from letting go of the need to? What if your soul isn't waiting for you to figure it all out, but simply to come home? We live in a world that demands clarity, demands productivity, demands perfection. But none of those things are requirements for inner freedom. You don't need to know what's next. You don't need to fix everything at once. You don't need to be perfect to be at peace. You just need to return to that quiet place inside you, the one that's never been broken, the one that doesn't yell, doesn't chase, doesn't try to prove anything, the one that simply is. In Buddhism, this space is not outside you. It's not found in books or gurus or external validation. It's within, always has been. Stillness isn't the absence of life. It's the presence of truth. It's where you stop running, stop pretending, and simply breathe. You've spent so much of your life trying to be enough. But here's the truth you may have forgotten. You already are. And that still, quiet voice inside you, it's not a whisper of doubt. It's a lantern, a small, steady flame that can light your way, no matter how loud the world gets. So the next time life feels overwhelming, the next time you feel lost or uncertain, don't try to escape it. Don't rush to fix it. Just return to your breath, to your body, to your being. Let the stillness hold you. Let it remind you of something you knew long before the world told you to forget. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're not late. You're unfolding. And you're not alone. You're on your way home. So let that stillness stay with you, like a lantern through the noise. Let it guide you. And may you never forget the way back to yourself.